The real estate market here in Vancouver is on the verge of collapse, and no, I don't mean collapse in the traditional sense where I think the bubble is finally going to burst. I am going to show you exactly why the market is going to continue to put upward pressure on the marketplace in Vancouver and across Canada for the next 10, 15 years, and why you need to get into the market, and to show you exactly why property is still the best asset class for your finances. So I am Kyle Mark, your Vancouver realtor, and if you're looking to buy, sell, invest, or relocate to my beautiful city of Vancouver, I am your real estate professional ready to help you. All my information is in the description below. Make sure you book a call with me. I am super easy to get a hold of, and I am here to help. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this good information with your friends, because it is going to make you a lot of money. So as you get into the nuts and bolts here, I'm going to pull up a report from the CMHC, who is usually very bearish on the market. Over the last several years, you may have heard the reports of continued calls of a market correction, a market collapse, things of that nature, to put a lot of negative spin on the marketplace. So it's quite surprising that they've put out this report, and I do believe it's a cry for help, because they finally have come to terms that they cannot stop this immovable object, which is the real estate market across Canada, and specifically in Toronto and Vancouver. So who is the CMHC, you ask? Well, they are the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, and they are responsible to help with the program of affordable housing, as well as help buyers get into the market. When you are getting into the marketplace, especially if you're putting less than 20% down, so anything less than a $1 million purchase, you are going to be needing their help, because they are the ones that help insure your property to make sure that you can get into the market. This is not a buyer seminar here, but just to give you a quick little information about how purchasing here works in Vancouver. If you're putting less than 20% down, a lender needs some assurances from you that you can pay your debt. So what will happen is, if you put less than 20% down and anything under $1 million, you have that option, because once you get past that $1 million evaluation, you have to put a minimum of 20% down. But in any case, the CMHC will help you and provide you with mortgage insurance. So the lender will know that even if you default on your mortgage, they will get paid out no matter what. So they do work with buyers and help buyers get into the marketplace, and they're also responsible for helping and guiding the way forward with affordable housing options. So a report that they've been put forward, and this is a report that they've been building out since 2019, outlines pricing predictions as well as housing predictions all the way up to 2030. So like I said, this is a case study from 2019 to 2030, and the results are quite staggering, especially when you put into practice that this corporation, they are quite bearish in the marketplace. They are not bulls in the marketplace, that's for sure. Like I mentioned off the top, they usually talk about these huge market corrections that absolutely made no sense. So right off the top, CMHC goes into the housing shortfall, and it paints a very dire picture, especially for those who are wanting to get into the market, or all those bubble bursters who are waiting for the market to crash. This report shows that Canada by the year 2030 is going to be short 3.5 million homes, which is a staggering number. Depending on immigration, a lot of these numbers or their findings are based off of immigration numbers between 600 and 700,000 newcomers coming to the country every year. We know that this number could expand upwards of 4 million homes, a shortfall of 4 million, depending if those immigration numbers need to expand, and they do. Last year, it was reported that there was 1.1 million newcomers that come to Canada in the year 2022. So if we stick to those numbers of around 7 figures, that housing shortage number is going to continue to skyrocket. So the number one question that I get asked almost on a daily basis is, who can afford to live here in Vancouver? And it is two things. Either it is someone who is getting a gift letter from a parent or a grandparent who has, passed on, is downsizing and giving them an early inheritance to help them offset the costs to get into the market. Or two, it is someone who is new to the country. As I mentioned, 1.1 million people were new to the country, whether through immigration or PRs, that we're calling Canada home, and Canada does a really good job in networking and including a high net worth individuals coming here into Vancouver and Toronto and across the country as a whole. Canada ranks actually number 6 in the world in attracting 7-figure plus net worth individuals coming here to the country. And as the bulk of immigration either comes to Toronto or Vancouver, these individuals can get into the marketplace right away. People within Canada just are not having as many kids needed to increase our population and to help with our overall GDP. If we have a shrinking population, our GDP is going to be lower, which means that our strength in the economy as a whole is going to have a negative effect. So it is very important, and a lot of people don't understand this in Canada. We need immigration. We need people here in a big way, because without it, our country will cease to survive, and we will not have as much abundance that we have now. So instead of looking at immigration as a negative thing, we actually need them as a whole. So unless people around Canada want to start having 4 or 5 kids per household, it is going to be needed to help with our workforce. It takes about 2.1 kids per household to keep the population at bay, and we're in Canada at around a number of 1.8. So we have a declining population, and it's going to be immigration will be the next arms race, because countries around the world, you look at countries like Japan or Italy, they are looking to halve their population over the next coming decades. So countries around the world are really going to start implementing very advantageous programs to immigrants and to attract people here. So Canada is going to need to be on the forefront to help with that. And if those numbers continue to increase, that means the housing shortfall will become greater and greater. Due to the fact that we have continued interest rate hikes, this has not done anything to help with this report either. Originally, it was slated that there was going to be 18.6 million new homes by 2030. That has been reduced to 18.2, and that's because of building and holding costs. The cities and municipalities have done nothing to incentivize builders to help with these projects. Vancouver has done some things to give developers a break on GST and some other taxes, but right now it's too late for that in the short term. They need to start making some big changes right here, right now, because at the end of the day, the immigration isn't what's killing and skyrocketing house pricing, it's the housing shortfall. And the only people that can change that are the ones that we elect into office, who can change some of the red tape to make sure that a developer can start their process, build a project, and get people in. It just takes too long. It takes about 6 to 8 years from when a developer asks for a rezoning until the first people are moving in. So it's a huge long delay. And with these increased interest rates, developers are pushing down their projects down the pipeline or walking away from them entirely, which is going to continue to aid in this housing shortfall. So as these rates continue to rise, even though our wonderful Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said these rates were going to stay low at historic low levels for a long time, that clearly has not been the case, because these rates are at a 20-year high, and it is killing just the developers out there, as well as all you variable rate holders such as myself. This housing report is also dependent on how Canada as an economy will fare over the next couple of years. Are we going to enter this big recession that everyone keeps talking about? If we are in low economic growth and the country as a whole starts to trip and fall a little bit, the housing shortfall may also in turn not be as bad. But I think even at a best case scenario, the report shows that we're going to be 3.1 million short. So we're either going to be between 3.1 million upwards of 4 million in terms of shortages across the country, and the bulk of those shortages will be felt in both Ontario and British Columbia. So here, being in Vancouver, that is going to have a huge effect on you as a buyer. If you're in the market already, that's amazing, because as we dig into some of these numbers that you're going to want to stay and look at, you're going to see, even at the worst case scenario, you're going to see some massive gains on your homes over the next 7 years. So as we look at Canada as a whole, and the baseline numbers that CMHC predicts, they show that property values by 2030 across the country are going to increase by 79%. Their worst case scenario is 69%, and their best case scenario is 89%. So as you can see, those are massive numbers. And if you are somewhere across the country, depending on where you are landing, this shows to you the urgency of just getting into the market. Unless you are going to, your earning potential is unlimited, how can you, begin to save enough money in years 3, 4, 5 of this report to be able to keep up with these types of numbers? I believe that the numbers here in Vancouver are going to be much higher on the top end. Keep in mind that this is an average across British Columbia, so there's a lot of small town communities that they're taking into account. So when you look into Vancouver proper, I do believe that by 2030 we're going to see numbers well over 100% in terms of what property values are going to do by 2030. So for all of you who are waiting to get into the market, stop waiting. You can see with these numbers that nothing here is stopping and there's no real solution. Even if cities, municipalities, the province, the country came on board and did everything that they needed to do, it is going to take several years for them to get ahead of this shortfall of volume. Not to mention in Vancouver, we don't have a sprawling geography. Where are we going to be able to put all these homes? We're not a Calgary, a Toronto, or Edmonton where we can go on and on forever and ever. So in areas across the country, for sure, they're going to have an easier time with affordability and housing surplus. But here in Vancouver, because we have the Pacific Ocean, the North Shore Mountains, the border to the south, and the Fraser Valley, we're so congested here. So it's very hard to try to create housing out of nothing. There's got to be a whole bunch more infrastructure and things of that nature, and that is why these numbers for British Columbia that are represented here, I believe, are going to be much, much higher in the year 2030, and that is for sure. If we look across the country to see who has the most dynamic numbers, that is definitely Quebec. The CMHC report states that by 2030, their housing pricing is going to more than double at 102%, with a worst case scenario coming in at 84%, which is just wild. The biggest surprise that came out of this report were definitely the findings from Alberta. On the high side, CMHC just gives a nominal price increase of 52% by 2030 with a low bar of 45%. And that's quite surprising. Alberta came in third lowest on the pile here. You have Newfoundland and Labrador on the bottom of the heap, then Saskatchewan at 51% top end, and then Alberta. And I'm sure you've heard a lot of the advertising, as I have, on both radio and the TV, with the province really trying to attract people to either Edmonton or Calgary with the reduced taxes and the property values. But when you look at a chart like this and seeing that your biggest asset is going to do less than half, possibly, compared to provinces in Quebec or BC or Ontario, it is something to definitely put a pause on. It is, very advantageous to move out of province. Very, an easier situation if you're not in the market. But if you are in the market and you're wanting to move out, I always, set a cautionary tale to clients, because once you move out of Vancouver here, it's very, very hard to get back in. For example, I've had a friend who's been living in Alberta for over a decade. He owns 3 properties. Has owned them for a long time, and he still, even if he would liquidate all 3, cannot get him and his family back here in Vancouver. So be very careful and have some long-term vision, and that's why it's really important to get a team behind you, financial planners, realtors, money managers, to understand what the long-term consequences and benefits could be with the move. If your asset is going to perform less than 50%, I don't know if it's really worth moving out of province for something at a cheaper price point. But all in all, these are some very striking numbers, and I think it shows to anyone out there, the bubble here across the country is not going to burst. When you have supply issues in the millions across the country, there is no going back. Yes, perhaps this can be treated in the next 10 years or so, but definitely by 2030, nothing is going to be solved, and we're going to see huge impacts on price points. And keep in mind, when these rates do start to fall, and a lot are saying by Q2 next year, the pricing is going to start to explode, because there's a lot of people that are hamstrung right now. And every time there's a rate decrease, more buyers are going to be coming into that pool. So if you're looking for property, just put it in. I work with so many buyers who are waiting, and they're costing themselves tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars. So make sure that if you, whatever the reason is why you're not getting to the market, you need to pair yourself with someone that you trust. And if you don't trust that someone, make sure that you reach out to other realtors. Make sure that you get a different approach. I hope you all have found some value in this. I know that a lot of times when you hear reports like this, they can be deflating and depressing, but I assure you there is always a way forward with home ownership. It doesn't have to be in Vancouver. There are other areas too. So depending on what your needs are, your motivations are, you just need to find yourself a realtor that knows what they're doing and can help you get to that place of financial freedom. And that is me. I'm Kyle Mark, your Vancouver realtor. And if you're looking to buy, sell, invest, or relocate here to my beautiful city of Vancouver, make sure you book that call with me. It's in the description. Thank you so much for your time, and remember that bubble is not about to pop.